Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll be showing you how I painted the Khainite Shadowstalkers Warlock with Doomfire Ring using contrast paints. Here's our DARKFLAME Warlock, all painted with contrast paints to a tabletop battle ready standard. This painting video is a little bit quicker than my other Khainite Shadowstalkers painting videos, so if you want something a little bit more in depth, then check out the video that I did for the Shroud Queen. Okay, let's get started. I based the model with the Wraithbone Citadel undercoat and assembled it with the Citadel plastic glue. And the paints we'll be using in this video will mostly be contrast paints, and our brush will be the Army Painter Wargamer character brush. I'll put links to everything we use in the video in the description below, and there'll be affiliate links to Element Games, and as affiliate links they're not going to cost you anything extra. In fact, they can save you up to 20%, and every sale through an affiliate link I get a small commission, and that helps me develop the channel, so thanks so much for that support. Right, let's get on with it. So the first thing I did was get some Gorilla Super Glue, and I just put a little bit of glue on the feet of the model there, and then I attached this to a piece of sprue that I've trimmed down, and this is going to be just the right size to use in our paint handle. And this is called the Bjorn Kumar method, and it's a great way to keep your miniatures fixed into the painting handle, but I wanted to do a few at the same time, so I filed down the top of a paint pot a little bit and stuck it to the top of that. Okay, now we're on to our first paint, which is the Contrast Black Templar. I'm using that for all the black leather parts of the model. And with the contrast paints, most of these are going to be one coat, and with the Black Templar, I'm putting it on nice and thick and making sure I start and end my brush strokes where I want most of the paint to pool, like in the most shaded areas, the recesses, and all the folds of that material. And then I'm using my brush to guide the paint, push it around and pull it where I want it to go. And then on the raised areas and on the edges where it's going to be more highlighted, I'm just kind of wicking the paint away a little bit. And now I'm moving on to the arm guard, and the same process, quite a bit of paint, and then putting it on and using my brush to push it where I want it to go. And now we're moving on to the contrast snakebite leather, and this is going to be for all the brown leather parts of the model. There's lots of different contrast paints in brown that you can try. If you want it darker, you could use Wildwood. If you want another version of the brown, you could use the Cygor brown, but I find this snakebite leather is just perfect for all the leather handles and leather belts and things like that. And just as we did with the black paint, one nice coat of this is going to give us our shading and leave the raised areas with a little highlight. So that's just one coat is all we need. And now I'm just putting a little bit on the handle as well. So that'll be for the strap in there. Again, you could use a different brown for the handle to mix it up a bit, but I like the snakebite leather. And our next paint are two, the Contrast Terradon Turquoise and the Shyish Purple. And we're going to use both these paints at the same time to do a wet blend on the cloak. Again, this is like a quicker version, but if you want to watch the Shroud Queen video, that's probably the best blend that I got out of this. And I've also done a separate video on just the wet blend, but I'll still do the wet blend with this example in almost real time, so you can see how it's done on the different cloaks, and that'll give you a good idea. But first of all here, I'm just putting the turquoise over the front of the hood of the cloak, and then we're going to gradually start working our way down to the purple. These two colours are really great for this technique, this wet blend, and I'll be doing another video soon because I haven't experimented with the other colours that much yet, and I certainly haven't done wet blends with them. So I'm going to be doing a video more in depth about contrast paints and some different effects as I experiment myself. So I thought that would be cool to share that with you as I do it. But now here we go. We're just working our way down to the area we're going to be wet blending. And now I'm putting a lot more paint on here. You can see it's really loaded up on the brush, and I'm getting most of that off as much as I can. And now straight into the purple. I'm getting loads of paint, and then I'm mixing it on the actual model, and I'm letting those two paints just bleed into each other, and they almost mix themselves really into the fade, so it does a lot of the work for you here. And then I'm just, as I'm leaving it, it's just bleeding in, and we've got plenty of time to work with it, so just let it do its thing. And then you can almost see it change in colour as you watch it, but I'm just getting a bit more purple, and then I'm pulling up that darker mix into the folds and the creases. Just let it focus. And then so I'm pulling the darker paint up into the folds and creases, and then just mixing the two paints a little bit more there and letting that blend come through. And then as I get down to the bottom, we're going to just go with just purple in a second. And just pulling it down, and now purple. The rest of that cloak is going to be the just straight up purple paint. So this was probably the easiest cloak to do this effect with, just because of the shape of it. So the paint almost mixed itself and kind of ran down and blended together really well, just because of the nature of the cloak and where the creases are. But some of the other ones that have got more curves and recesses in, you have to guide it a little bit more and push that paint around. But here I didn't have to do that too much. But I made sure that the folds were really getting a lot of paint, because that's where we want that nice dark shadow to come. But these two paints, when mixed together and even separately, leave a really nice dark shadow. And you can see that blends come through really well there. So it's still drying. So that's the blend complete, and I just took some of the shyest purple and I've just done the inside of the cloak all in that purple. And I've gone really thick here because this is going to be a dark area, so it's in shadow. So I want that really dark, and that's going to match the bases as well. And there we are, that's all dry, or drying nearly, and you can see we've got a nice effect there just with two contrast paints, and it only took a couple of minutes to get that. And now we're going to take some ceramite white. This is a base paint. You can use any white for this. I mean, the best paint to use would be the same colour it's primed in, so a Wraithbone layer paint, but I don't have that, so I've just gone with the white. And that's going to help give a nice pale skin anyway. And here I'm just touching up the areas where some of the contrast paint has bled onto the different sections. And I want the flesh to be really bright anyway, so this white's going to be good for that. And that's the trick here, just keep it really neat and make sure all the areas you're blocking in are nice and tidy. And there I'll see on the arm there, I've gone over with that brown earlier on with the snakebite leather. So I'm just tidying that up. And the flame, we want that nice and bright. So I'd give that a coat of white anyway, even if I didn't go over it by mistake with any of the contrast paints. So this is getting a nice coat of white, and one coat's usually enough. And then finally, just giving the raised areas of the face plenty of white as well. Now we're going to go with some lead belcher. This is a base paint, and this is going to be for all the metal work. And this is quite a dark silver. You could use a lighter, maybe Vallejo or the Citadel Stormhost silver. I just picked up a pot of that, so I'm going to be trying that on some new models soon. But I've gone with lead belcher here, and that's going to give us a nice base. And I'm just using this on the silver parts of the model. And you could use it on the gold as well, because we're going to put in other paints on top of this. But for the Khainite Shadowstalkers, I've gone for a brighter gold effect. So we'll be using a gold paint for that instead. And here we go. Here's the gold we're using. It's Vallejo 0.996. And this is nice and bright. And this is going to be great for the badge there and for the other gold parts. There's not too many gold parts on this particular miniature, but I think the gold worked really well on the Shroud Queen and some of the others too. And then not forgetting those knee guards, which are really cool pieces of armour, almost like weapons. And so I'm just giving them a nice coat of that gold too. We want those to be really bright. I think this gold works really well against the turquoise colour. And you can see here, I'm always moving the model, so I try and keep myself in the same position and then move the model just to make it easier, and so I've got a nice steady hand. And now we're going on to some more of that Pterodon turquoise, great colour this. And this is going on the little like pouch that they carry, and they've all got these, so they all get a little bit of that on there, and that's just going to tie in nicely with the hood. Now it's time to shade up the silver parts of the weapon with some null oil shade. And you could use contrast paint for this. I've used some black or grey in the past, and that works really nice. But I've gone for the null oil here, just to be a bit subtle. And that's going to go on all the silver parts of the blades and the different weapons. And next we've got some Aethermatic blue. And that's going to be used for this kind of magic flame. And this is the Doomfire ring. So that's going on there. And I'm going to give it one coat. And this isn't as dark, you'll notice, as the turquoise we used, so a lot of the white comes through from underneath. but immediately you can see how it's going into the recesses there and leaving us with shade. So for the effect we want here, this is great for the first coat, but we'll put another coat on when this one's completely dry later on. Now it's time for some contrast agarus dunes, and this is going to go on all the gold areas that we painted earlier. And this is one of my favourite effects. This makes a really nice gold shade, and putting this over a metallic paint works so well. And when I did the terrain, I was just learning that the contrast paints work so well for this. And when I did like the arm stash for the catacomb set, I was putting blues, reds, yellows, this one, this agarus dunes, and all different colours over the metal to get some really nice effects. So it works really well. I can definitely recommend doing this. As that gold dries, we'll go back to the achromatic blue, and now our flame there is dry. I'm going with a second coat, but this time I'm only going for about 2/3 from the tip of the flame down. So I'm going to leave the base of the flame with just one coat, but then from the top down, the top of the flame down, we're going to come down 2/3. And this is similar to how we painted proper fire flames on our Scions of the Flame. So same effect. And now just to finish off those flames, I've got the Black Templar contrast back. I'm just going to put a tiny bit on the tips just to resemble like smoke. This is the idea where the fire flame turns to smoke. And you could do this while that coat's still a little bit wet and the two will just blend together. Or you can wait till they dry if you want it to be like a stronger effect. For this one, I've just put it on while it's still a little bit wet because I don't want it to stand out too much, because this isn't really fire, it's more like a magic fire. Whereas on like the orange, yellow and red flames, I probably want this to be a little bit darker and more pronounced. Next step is to take some contrast medium and contrast gilman flesh, and we're going to mix 3 parts contrast medium to 1 part gilman flesh, and this is going to give us a nice pale shade to use on all the flesh areas of the model. And so I'm giving it a nice coat all over, but where the recesses, like in the hood there, certainly in the mouth, the eyes, in between all the muscles, I'm trying to get a bit more paint in there. So that's where I'm ending my brush strokes and starting them. And then I'm just using the brush to push the paint where I want it to go and where I want it to build up. And you can always put more than 1 coat of this on, and that's why it's good to use the contrast medium. It gives you a little bit more control and gives you more time to work. And once it's dried, you could see how it looks and then decide if you wanted to add more definition or not. And now I take the brightest silver I've got, which is a 0.997 Vallejo, and I'm using this to highlight all the metal, and that includes the silver and the gold. And I found that using the silver highlight on gold makes it really bright and makes it a lot better than trying to use like a gold highlight, which is what I did on the first of the Khainite Shadowstalkers that I did. I used a gold highlight and it wasn't as pronounced as this. So I'm certainly going to go back to silver from now on when I want the gold to be really shiny like this. And I'm just taking the edge of my brush, so trying to use like the side of the brush and run it down the edge of the area I want highlighted. And that's going to give us a nice bright highlight. And whereas I was only putting 1 coat on, I found that 2 is much better to get it more pronounced. And then don't forget the underside too. So there's going to be flames bouncing around all over the place. So we're going to get some highlights coming off all these parts of the metal. And it's nice and subtle, but just make sure it makes it look sharp and a bit more shiny. And then a little bit on the badge there to finish off. Make them look nice and bling. And these Khainite Shadowstalkers are much more shiny with their gold and silver, so this works great for that. And then that's our painting finished, so I snip it off the pot and then carefully just run my clippers under the model, so I'm not touching anything I've painted, and with a little snip, that super glue that just allows it to come off really easily. Here's a base that I made before, and this is used with the same Shyest purple, so it'll give a real shadow effect. And I basically just filed the feet down to get rid of any excess glue that was left, and then stuck it onto the base with some Gorilla Glue. And there's our finished model, all tabletop battle ready. And I'm really happy with the blending that we got on this. And if you want to see how to make the bases, I've done a separate video so you can see that. And I've also done another video on how to fix miniatures to bases, so they can check that out too. And that was for my Scions of the Flame. So this was a bit quicker, this video, just really to go through the paints and a couple of techniques. But check out the Shroud Queen for a more in-depth, almost real-time video. I've also put videos up for the Shroud Blade, the other DARKFLAME Warlock with crossbows, and the Slaughter Shade. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. I hope this video was helpful to you, and I really like the contrast paints and the effects you can get quite easily and quickly. So for a beginner tabletop battle ready standard, I think they work so well. Thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.